Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, may I have your attention, please? It's Brock Bowen, the Lifetarian here. And you know I love bringing you the best. You know I love research and curating the connections around the world. And, you know, I know this episode is going to be great. I have a really good feeling about it. I've been really curious about brain function, really curious about a lot of elements on peak performance. I often talk about momentum and so forth. And the gentleman we're going to speak to today is Ramon David. And really interested to have a chat to him. He's an applied neuroscientist, a performance coach, doing some wonderful things in the world. I hope I've introduced you properly, given you that. I want him to tell you guys more about what he does, because I'm fascinated with the topic, you know, brain performance. I'm fascinated with peak performance. I'm fascinated with flow states, momentum. And I want to delve into neuroscience. So yeah, tell us, where are you at the moment? What are you up to in your life? And what are you creating for the world that's amazing?
Wow, thank you for that amazing introduction. Pleasure to be here. So really looking forward to seeing, you know, where we can take this really. And so let me give you a quick rundown on what I've been doing for the last couple of years. So the last couple of years, I've really been working on bringing coaching and neuroscience together. Now, you know, traditionally neuroscientists it's a hard science, so it's very grounded in theory. There is this sort of new wave of neuroscience that's starting to come through now, known as applied neuroscience, and it's basically taking the theory and turning it into very practical application, which it's not the traditional way of doing things, but that's obviously, you know, there's a lot of real world practical application that we can really play around with. That we can draw from neuroscience. And so that's really, my studies are in applied neuroscience, and of course merging that with coaching. What I've been working on the last couple of years is a neuroscience-based transformative model. Now,
let me jump in there for a second quickly.
Please.
For the guys that don't even know what neuroscience is yet, you know, we're around the circles where we're starting to talk about neuroscience, but what's the simplest explanation of neuroscience before we drop into the next point? Just so
so traditionally it's really just the study of the nervous system. And so, I mean, but it's really such a big field. And then you have all these subfields. So you've got affective neuroscience, which deals with emotion. You've got cognitive neuroscience, which deals with, you know, mental processes and performance and things like that. There are all these sort of subsets of neuroscience. But I think if we're talking about applied neuroscience, really we're talking about what can we learn about the brain, and I'm using the term brain to really encapsulate the entire, what we call the embodied brain. So it's really the brain proper, as well as the body, the gut, the heart, the entire nervous system, the endocrine system, and all the related systems and components. I'm really using it as a metaphor to describe all of the processes that are going on within the body. And so really we're talking about, you know, what we can learn from brain science and how we can apply that in the real world. And of course, the way that I'm doing it is applying it to coaching. And in this case, specifically what I call a transformative model, which is all based around making changes in the brain to help someone live a more self-directed, positively engaged life of meaning, achievement, and fulfillment. So there's a lot of different elements in that, which I'm sure we'll break down as we go through the conversation.
Meaning, achievement, and fulfillment. Why did you choose those three?
Well, I started off mostly with the self-directed and positively engaged components. And the self-directed is really about being able to be under one's own control. So it's a very consciously designed part of existence, rather than just sort of being under the control of the habitual patterns and programs that, you know, a lot of us fall into, because that's the way the brain operates. It likes to conserve energy, and it likes to operate in these patterns. So it's really about bringing us into a level of consciousness where we can direct ourselves, but in a positively engaged way. And that's really where we start to intersect with the meaning, achievement, and fulfillment. So the meaning part really comes about from, there's probably a little bit of a background of positive psychology here. And someone actually, was having a conversation with a couple of friends in the bar the other day, and I was saying, you don't really talk about happiness much. And I think that it was quite deliberate, because the way I see the elusive state of happiness that people have been chasing since probably the dawn of time, yet have we still managed to even figure it out? I think from a really a way of being able to define what these things are to help construct models and strategies to have the life we want, I would put happiness into more of the state category, not as a way of being continuously.
Sure.
So if I sort of contrast that against meaning, creating a life of meaning can bring happiness from time to time as a state. But, if we look at like the anecdotal evidence, people that chase happiness, do they ever really have this continuous life of happiness on a moment to moment basis each and every day? I'm going to probably suggest not. And so I would say that meaning can bring so much more than what happiness or trying to essentially chase happiness can. And so that's the meaning aspect of it. And of course, a life of meaning is different for everybody. And I think that's one of the important things here, is that with this neurotransformative model, it's about helping the other person really construct a life of meaning in terms of what meaning means for them. Because what meaning is to you and what meaning is for me could be completely different things.
Yeah, 100%.
And so the achievement and fulfillment. Look, I'm sure we all want to achieve things. And I use the word achievement instead of success, mostly because I think there's probably a lot of associations with the word success, particularly around financial things. And that's not to exclude those things, but it's to be a little bit more sort of all-encompassing across many different areas of life. And so I think achievement, and then adding the fulfillment component, because of course achievement without fulfillment, I'm sure you've achieved things in your life, as have I and everybody else, I'm sure, and you achieve them and you get to that point of succeeding, and then you go, oh, wasn't kind of how I expected it to be, or
is that all there is?
Is that all there is? So it's really about bringing this life of meaning, of achieving things as we progress throughout our life, but also in a more fulfilling way. And of course, these are all very abstract terms, so we get into sort of defining them a little bit more for the individual. But that kind of, I think, it gives you the all-round overview of what the neurotransformative model is, the aim is, essentially.
Yeah, to be able to change it. I always talk about, when I'm talking to my clients, say I want to do a backflip right now. There's no wiring there for that. It's something I've endeavored to do for a while. And I know there's things in business, for some of the people watching, they're going to be entrepreneurs, different things in business. And I know there's something where you hit a bit of a clunk. And I'm always looking at different ways to change that as quickly as possible. I'm doing a process at the moment where I look this way. So I turn my head that way, and then I look the other way. Turn my head that way. And just looking at all these little simple things we can do. Because sometimes I know I've been a student of personal development for a while. I love it. It's a great thing to learn, and goal setting mindset. But I did all that stuff and I had the success, but I wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I kind of lost everything at some point in my life and my business. And then I was happy. And I went, doesn't make sense. And I was going for a worthy progression or a meaning, which is how you've endeavored to describe it then.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So let's go through some practical things people can do.
Yeah, sure.
I like to get straight into tools, add as much value as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So the neurotransformative model, there's really 5 domains, and this particular model is actually for coaches and practitioners. So I think that there's a couple of levels on which we can talk about it. And so I think I'm probably going to start at more of the end consumer. So even though the model is for practitioners, coaches, we're going to try and bring it to a level where obviously a lot of end consumers that don't have any knowledge around transformation, around brain processes, can understand it. Yeah. So feel free to sort of help direct me here if you think that we're getting a little bit too technical.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. So there's really 5 domains that we can work with people to help them live this more self-directed life of meaning, achievement, and fulfillment in a positively engaged way. So I'll briefly describe what the 5 are, and maybe we can dive into perhaps one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is...
I can put a link in the show notes too, so you guys can review it. So make sure you listen here rather than taking notes on, mate, because you've got some content we can put in there too, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Well, let's run through it now. Boom, 5.
Yep. So we've got the neurobiology of self, and that's probably the most complex domain to unpack because there's just so many moving parts. But if I sort of give you the basics, it's about working with people on a level where we're increasing things like certainty, satisfaction, connection, we're changing attachment style, and we're looking at identity level. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're looking at making changes on those levels in a more empowering way, and of course, moving them from the disempowering ways that they're meeting their need for certainty or satisfaction, or the way that they're connecting, as an example.
Sure.
So the second domain is regulating emotions. Mm-hmm. Incredibly important, and obviously neuroscience has an incredible amount that it can of research that it can contribute to this particular area. So regulating emotions, and that's what I just did my postgrad research on, very much in terms of how, in this case, entrepreneurs, in particular coaches, when they're trying to overcome obstacles and challenges while building their business, what kind of impact does emotions have? And so we can go a little bit further into that.
Yeah, super curious on that one and delve deeper. Let's make sure we hit back to that for sure.
Yeah. I think we'll probably delve into that one because there's a lot of practical tools and things that we can talk about with regulating emotions that people can start using pretty much straight away.
Perfect.
The third one is the control of attention. And so that both regulating emotions and control of attention, I would put into the category of skills that need to be developed.
Yeah.
The thing about controlling attention and the mindful brain is that unless you continuously do it and you make it a practice, you fall back into the habitual way that the brain will process information.
Yeah.
The fourth one is directing the self and solving problems. So this is really about the differences between things like being values driven and goal oriented. And of course, there's nothing wrong with setting goals, but I'm going to suggest that a lot of, again, looking at the anecdotal evidence, how many people set goals and never actually reach them.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that what a lot of people try to set as goals are actually more like values. And if they treated them more like values, or they got to the value that was sort of underpinning what the goal was meant to be mean for them, and they were more values driven, then they would achieve the goal rather than trying to focus on the goal, and they end up having some kind of, usually a values conflict, or maybe the goal conflicts with their identity level beliefs, or there's always some kind of underlying problem, the reason why people don't reach their goals. Yeah. And so really, as you are going about this self-directed life, really identifying and figuring out, well, what are your values and what are the things that are going to help direct your life? And of course, then you can establish some goals along the way, but the goal isn't the primary focus.
Yeah.
And also, as you are obviously going about your life and you are directing yourself in this way, you're going to come across problems, right? And it's probably the thing that I speak to people about the most. I've got a problem. And so when we talk about problem solving, I think the area that neuroscience can really contribute a lot is this idea of the differences between analytical thinking and facilitating insight as problem-solving modalities.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people tend to try to solve problems that are better suited with insight, with using analytical thinking. And so again, the neuroscience can contribute a lot to this discussion about what are the most appropriate situations where analytical's going to be more effective or insight's going to be more effective. And of course, then using those particular thinking modes to solve the problems that you're going to come up against.
Is there processes, just to jump in for that for a second, is there a process to switch between that part of the brain? Between facilitating thinking and...
Analytical versus insight? Yeah. So they are two fairly distinct processes in the brain. I think the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to analytical versus insight is that if we approach it as a dichotomy, it's either analytical or insight, That's really a metaphor.
Mm.
It's not like you're going to use only one or only the other.
100%.
There's been a lot of times where, just to draw on some personal experience, I've been working at a problem very analytically, and then I've walked away, and we'll talk about this process in a moment because it's part of the insight process. I've been working at it hard analytically. I walk away, and then 2 minutes later, I get the insight.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's one or the other. They can be very much, part of an entire process. But I think if we sort of, use this dichotomy as a metaphor for saying, well, what can we learn about insight that applies to problem solving, and how can we better facilitate insight? Then of course you are going to be more likely to have insights, and there are a lot of benefits with that too, like the positive energy that you get from having an insight, that aha moment where it's like, oh, I've got it, this is amazing.
Yes.
So I'm now so motivated to continue moving forward. So there's a lot of benefits in that. But yes, they are the neural basis for analytical as a standalone process and insight as a standalone process are two quite different processes. Yeah. So again, neuroscience can add a lot to that conversation as well.
I get a lot of my best downloads when I'm hosing the driveway or mowing the lawns. Most mundane things, and as thing pops in, I know exactly what to do for the next part of my business. It's fascinating.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Mine's getting out on the mountain bike, getting up into the forest and going for a ride.
Oh, 100%.
And I'll almost even use that as a strategy. I'll be like, I've got this problem to solve. Okay, I'll work really, really hard on it for, 5 or 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Until I can't work on it anymore. And it's almost like you go borderline into that frustration of, I'm like, okay, time to go for a ride. And I know that sometimes I could be 200 meters down the trail. I've got it. Yeah, exactly. Whip out the phone and, here's the solution, write it all down.
That's what I'm, even in all the things we do you ever find it fascinating that we go full circle where we go and research technology to study our brainwaves, to go spend more time in nature, drink more water, have different conversations, avoid groupthink, travel more, move more, breathe more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes we seem to wait for the science to back it up before we do it. But I do love when there is science to correlate it, because I even heard a thing the other day, boys need 3 hours of movement a day, otherwise their brain doesn't function properly.
Yeah, for sure. And I can say, I probably spend definitely a large portion of my time doing one or the other, and probably a lot more out in nature and moving and doing those sorts of things. Which actually brings us on to the fifth domain.
Number 5.
Number 5, which is, I call these the 7 habits of brain healthy people. And these are really the things that you want to do on a regular basis. You really want to be doing them, some of them every few hours, and they support all the other domains. And so the top 3 are exercise, regular exercise. And I say that, I really mean move your body every single day. I can't stress that enough. Sleep, really, really good quality sleep. Yeah. If you get really good quality sleep, your ability to regulate your emotions is just so much more, enhanced than without good quality sleep, because that sleep is going to really soothe your amygdala activity. So you're not getting these threat response reactions when you come up against a particular situation that, you might have a reaction to, an emotional reaction to. So let's go. Really good quality sleep.
Make sure you stay focused. We're up to number point 2 now, but sleep. It's a huge thing. Entrepreneurs put their head on the pillow and then they can't sleep because the mind goes crazy. As a kid, I couldn't sleep. I wanted to stay up. I still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes with my best ideas. This morning I had to wake up at 4:30. My alarm didn't go off. I still woke up anyway because I wanted to get up. Yeah. And there's something about that too. If I'm oversleeping the alarm, I'm probably off purpose. But I want to look at, like, I don't have the meaning or the fulfillment, because if I'm stoked, if I'm excited about life, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to get into my day. I'm going to do these things. But ultimately with sleep, what are some of the things you found to optimize sleep? I'm always looking at this. I'm constantly researching this. So I want to know what are just top 3 things for sleep.
Top 3 things for sleep.
We're going to stay with 5, but 3 is good.
So I would say, first of all, everyone's different. and we're all different at different stages of life.
Mm.
There was a stage that I went through where I had clients starting when this is, a long time ago when I was in the health and fitness industry, and I had clients at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
I still go to bed at midnight. I'd be up at 6 hours of sleep, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
These days, I'm probably a little bit more like 8.5 or 9 hours, but I'm doing very different things throughout the day. I'm mentally taxing myself a lot more, and I'm also physically taxing myself quite a lot throughout the day as well, because I like to get out on the mountain bike or go and do some training or whatever else.
Yeah, cool.
And so different things at different stages of life, and also differences. You might be great on 7 hours, and I might need 9 hours. Someone else might need 6 hours. I think first of all, the individual differences. Know how many hours of quality sleep it's going to take so that you feel fully rested is the first one. The second one would be, if you're finding yourself being fatigued throughout the day, especially into later parts of the afternoon, have a 10-15 minute nap.
Yeah.
You can feel so much more revitalized and recharged just from a quick 10-15 minute thing.
Power snooze.
And perhaps if you're the type of person that like you lay down and you're out, perhaps I wouldn't suggest doing that. Perhaps just a 15-minute meditation. So that part of rejuvenation is so important, and you'll find that people will just get so much more out of their mental performance when they're fully rested. So that's number 2. Number 3, I would say quality over quantity. So it probably fits in a little bit with the first one, but I'd say like 6 hours of really good deep sleep can be so much better than 9 or 10 hours of sleep where you're waking up all the time, or you never really fully enter a deep sleep. And so you really need to give your brain a chance to go through this rejuvenation process, and of course the quality is going to do that. I would say a little bit more important than the quantity.
100%. I'm gonna give you a couple of my ones back just because it's funny.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I've been wearing those blue blocker glasses at night. I'm finding them really good.
Yep.
I've changed the settings on my iPhone, so if I do happen to check my phone, I try not to be on it for at least an hour, if not 2, before I go to bed. Sometimes there's things I've got to do. It's just the reality of life. Friday night I was up till 10:30 working. Try not to do that too much. Like, make sure it's not part of my practice, but it's just what's got to be done sometimes. So blue blockers, staying off the laptop, sometimes herbal teas, not drinking coffee after 10. Really good healthy fats, moving enough throughout the day. And one of my favorite ones, if I need high quality sleep, I sleep outdoors on the grass in the open air. Otherwise, I've got the window fully open. There's some of my ones. But I also find getting in the ocean as well, getting in the water every day, seems to optimize my sleep.
I would say I would add to that as well with the screens at night. I think one of the worst things you can do is have that white light the last few hours at night. I mean, if you have to work at night, like I'm on a Mac, I use an app called Flux, which turns the screen orange, so it's an orange light instead of a white light. But again, try not to use it at all. But just to touch on your other points, the third. So we covered 2 of the 7 habits, right? We've got movement, we've got sleep. The third one is nutrition.
Nutrition, awesome.
Right. So I would say they're the 3: proper nutrition. And people always have their the things that they like to do. I like to do paleo. I like to be vegetarian. I like to whatever else. There's one thing that I could say from again having my start as a coach in the health and fitness industry many moons ago, is that people are really people can get a little bit sort of defensive when you start talking about nutrition and what they should be doing, or things that they might want to consider doing. So I'm just going to suggest, when it comes to nutrition, that you do all the things that we know that we shouldn't really be doing. So I'm not going to say, do paleo, do vegan or whatever else, but I'm going to suggest really limit the alcohol, limit the amount of caffeine that you have, especially later in the day. Drink loads of water, and get good quality foods. Good quality foods. A lot of vegetables, some fruits, get some protein, lots of protein in there, get good quality fats in there. And, without getting to the specifics of, macronutrient ratios and things like that. Because, of course, we're all slightly different and we all have different preferences and ways of looking at things. But I'm going to suggest, as far as the nutrition goes, to really reduce the things that are going to affect you on a day-to-day basis. Yep. Drinking 3 glasses of wine every night, you're probably going to feel crappy in the day at some point. So it's weighing those things up. So they're the first 3, and I would call those the fundamental habits. They're the things that are going to they're going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. If you can move your body, get good quality sleep, and get some decent nutrition, it's going to make such a difference. And I don't think people really realize how much of a difference it makes to mental performance and brain function, and supporting all of those other domains. It's huge. Have
you seen any studies on organic food and brain activity or sleep? I'm a massive advocate for chemical-free food, organic biodynamic food. I was just curious if you've ever, in your travels, have you ever seen any research around that?
Not on food, no. On sleep, yeah, there's a ton of research on sleep. And in fact, it's been shown that sleep deprivation is, in terms of mental performance, is the equivalent to driving drunk.
Yeah.
And the difference is we don't actually realize how much of an impact it has, whereas obviously, you've had a few drinks, you can feel the difference.
Yeah.
But when it comes to cognitive tasks, cognitive performance, and different tests that have been applied across various research, we can show that it's essentially the equivalent of being intoxicated if you're sleep deprived. So yeah, but the food's a really interesting one. I haven't actually ever come across anything. I'm
gonna be a laptop warrior on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
I always love listening to Dave Asprey's podcast a bit at the moment. Ben Greenfield, looking at obviously the role of emotions, but also food and how they intertwine. It's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Stay on task. So top 3, we've got more to roll.
Yeah, so there's 4 more. So the last 4 we've got, and I'm just going to rattle these off and we can dive into each one of them. We've got downtime, which also include, either mindfulness practice, meditation, hypnosis, just chilling out and letting your thoughts wander. I'll put that into downtime.
Yeah.
Then we've got focus time, uninterrupted blocks of focus time. Your ability to hold your attention on one particular task for extended periods is going to be really a skill that is so worth developing, and it's going to support so many of the other domains. And I think it's something that's very much being lost in this constant, distraction environment that we now place ourselves in. We've got the notifications, we've got the phone going off here, we've got someone demanding our attention here. So focus time. The next one is social time. We've evolved as social creatures. Back, tens of thousands, 100,000 years ago, we wouldn't have survived without other people. The lone hunter wouldn't have been the lone hunter for very long. And so we are social creatures by nature. We need to connect with other people. We need to socialize. And the last one is challenge. And by that, I mean, essentially putting yourself in an environment or seeking out new and novel and challenging things. Right? The brain is an adaptation machine. It loves to be challenged. It likes to adapt to new situations. And so, of course, learning a new skill is something that the brain's really going to soak up, and it's really going to be, they say, an engaged brain is a happy brain.
100%.
So there are 7 habits of brain healthy people, and they really support the other 4 domains. So you find that the more you do those 7 things on a regular basis in really empowering ways and really positive ways, it's going to help train your attention. It's going to help you regulate your emotions. It's going to help you be more self-directed and be more values-driven and live a life of purpose, and also change the things that you need to change with style of attachment and identity and meeting all those other needs as well.
I want to drop in and talk about focus.
Yes.
I just think with our culture right now, we're creating an ADD culture.
Yeah.
I don't think, I dropped on that before about boys need 3 hours of movement a day. I always like to drop this into at school. I was the top of my year up until year 11. Year 6 and 12, school captain, yada, yada. I did well intellectually, did university, blah, blah, blah. I'm keen to do some more research. I've taken my life on more of the path of flow,
Yep.
momentum, peak performance, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And interested in other things. My sister's a specialist, a pediatrician, PhD. She's done a lot of different research papers.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that science is quite skewed in it, how it comes across. I still appreciate it. I just find that it has a bit of a bias. And I'm fascinated though with this area of focus at the moment, particularly with kids and particularly with a lot of entrepreneurs are men currently. A lot of females are coming through. But we've almost designed this world where you go to the shops and some people describe it as wigging out. People get anxious or they wig out where they just can't focus. And I believe it's designed that way. Because if you've got people in like a deer in headlights, they're going to buy more stuff. When you're on Facebook, it's just going, grrr, people buying stuff before they even know what they're doing. And people are using principles like some of the ones we're talking about today to gain people's attention, to gain people's focus. They might even position themselves and say, here I am at my house with my cars, and tell a fake story, and then people buy their stuff. And it's happening all the time because people are studying these principles now to the point they think of human beings as dogs. They can go and someone buys stuff. And we're in this culture which is becoming quite sick in some ways, but in other ways, it's the best time ever to be alive. I'm so excited, so grateful for it all. So I want to shift my focus on that, not to get too negative, just to be real. And go, cool, we want to focus our attention. What are the best ways to manage that in a world of constant distraction?
Yeah, look, really, really interesting points I think you've brought up. And to a very large extent, I agree with you. It's a culture where there's a lot of available information that can be used in different ways. And of course, it can be used to manipulate people and it can also be used to empower people as well. And so I've kind of gotten to a point where it's like, well, there's nothing I can do about, there's nothing personally I can do about the way that it's used to manipulate. However, if I can use it to help empower people by, training them in how to use their attention, then that's the part that I can play. And so, I totally agree with you. I think the way that people can start to use their focus and attention so they're not caught up in reacting to and being part of another person's agenda is to, first of all, just be more mindful of every situation. And let's get into a little bit of the neuroscience behind this. So we have two distinct forms of what we call self-reference. We've got what's known as the narrative, and in neuroscience we'll call it the narrative network, and we've got the direct experience network. Now, the narrative is really when you're inside your own mind, and you could be daydreaming or thinking about the future or thinking about the past, thinking about yourself. There's a subset of that which I call the negative narrative, which is when you're inside your own head and you're worrying about stuff. Thinking about, what's coming up tomorrow, what's my future going to be like, did I say this wrong, right? You're inside your own head, negative narrative. In contrast, the direct experience network is when you're taking in information through the senses. And this is really, when you're in that network, you are incredibly present because you're seeing things and hearing things, or maybe the sensation of touch, and you're not caught up in creating a story around it. You're just taking that information in and you're fully present. Now, in untrained individuals, these two networks are fused. These two neural networks are quite fused, meaning that they can sort of move between them and in ways that are not overly conscious a lot of the time. You might have moments where you go, yeah, I'm in flow and I'm taking information through the senses. And a lot of the time you might be fully aware when you're inside your own head and worrying about things. But for the most part, you might be moving towards back and forth between these things throughout the course of the day. So with a little bit of attention training, we can actually separate these two networks, meaning that you have more conscious control. You have more ability to move between these two experiences. So when you find yourself getting caught up in the moment, whether it's inside your own head, maybe you're being taken for a ride, by someone else, and you're just caught up in some sort of moment with them or something, you can just pause for a moment and then start taking in information through the senses. And it really gives you this space to then decide how you want to be in that moment, rather than just being swept up in it, whether it's inside your own head or if it's been really having someone else take the lead on that situation when we were talking about manipulation before. And so to really start to separate these two networks, and again, the research has shown that it doesn't take a lot. There's one particular study, I think, that showed that 3 consecutive 20-minute mindfulness meditations can start to make changes. Like 3 lots of 20 minutes. It's hardly anything. And so I think what the folks at home, the people who are listening, will want to really do is just start being aware of how they're using their attention. And just bring it into awareness first of all. You've got to be aware of something first of all. So when you're inside your own head and when you're worrying about certain things, okay, well, you find yourself in that moment, it might be, well, now let's pay attention to something else outside of that. It could be, well, what's going on out in nature? What are the color on, because I'm looking out into the bush right now. What are the colors that particular bird has? Am I being aware of how I'm breathing, as an example? So really just start to shift your attention around and start playing around with it. And you'll find that you'll give yourself more space to decide how you want to be in that moment. Does that kind of sort of sum it up a bit?
Yeah, it definitely drops me in with some good stuff. And I think something that I caught there too is when I pay attention to different things, I'm also looking out at nature. Behind the computer screen, it's facing this way. Yeah. And as I look out, I can look out straight now. There's trees, there's the sky. I think that's another deliberate thing I've found too. I think a lot of people get stuck in these little cubicles and offices where they're under white light. A friend talked about the other day, he does speaking around the world. He had an injury. He's about to work with another guy, Roger Hamilton, on a project who's quite big in the whole scene. And meanwhile, he was working at an insurance company recently. And he talked about white light being like junk food for your eyes. And he felt terrible, brain fog, all kinds of things, lacking focus, but he was making lots of money. A lot of people stay focused on that. And fortunately for him, we had a conversation. He's managed to change and exit that, which has worked out well.
Yeah.
But I have another question too. This is a personal thing for me. I'm endeavoring to explain to people, and I'd be curious the neuroscience perspective. Often when you see my posts on Facebook, I'll sometimes use the language that sounds like a surfer. And I'll sometimes use the language flow, such as living the dream. I really like that phrase. And the thing that I'm endeavoring to do with people is actually communicate for me what's being experienced more and more is the experiences that I'm having in my dreams at night. I'm then experiencing that in the physical reality. And I didn't always. I've always had intense dreams, used to have a lot as a kid. But even to the point more recently, this is just a background story too, to the point we had a sense and intuition that we're going over to California, to Santa Monica. We used to live up in Cairns. We had a big house there, just Christy and I, but a 4-bedroom house. It was nice. So we put one of the rooms on Airbnb. And we thought that was a cool idea. And we made the decision that we're going over to California. Next thing, our next guest for Airbnb was from Santa Monica, California. That's an interesting correlation. And then Christy was watching YouTube. She's sitting there watching her phone, watching YouTube. And then the guys that happened to book into our Airbnb experience were also the guys that are on YouTube. 30 minutes later, they're at our door. And we have this experience all the time where I just think of someone, they show up in my experience, blah, blah, blah. It's happening more and more the more I place my attention on it. At the start of the conversation, I said, may I have your attention, please? So if you guys are still watching, you're awesome. If you can stay focused with us for 55 minutes, you're amazing. It's rare. So keep watching. We got some more good stuff for you. But that, in terms of neuroscience, the correlation between dreams and reality, and is there a difference? You know, people talk about the matrix and the things, like we know we're experiencing and touching things. But I don't know, life just keeps getting more interesting the more that I pay attention.
Yeah, look, God, you really want to open that box up? We could be here for a while.
we might have to do another conversation on that.
Yeah. I think there's one thing that I can that is certainly related to this, without opening the whole box up, because there's so many different elements to this. But I think one thing that I think would probably be important for our listeners, for our viewers, that I think that they could find some use out of, is that the brain marks things that it believes is important based on you know, how your identity, how you perceive the world, the meanings that you make from the experiences you have, and there's all these things intertwined with this that basically the brain will mark or highlight information that it thinks is important, and then a lot of that information is then filtered into awareness, and that awareness then really allows you to have certain experiences in a way that you then perceive them through those filters. You create new meanings, and that then reinforces this loop. And so essentially you get what you expect, if I can sum it up in that way. And so I think that for people that are wanting to live a more self-directed life and have these things that you talk about that just kind of feel like they're showing up, is to be more aware of the experiences that they're having and the things that are going on around them. And the more you pay attention to these things, the more you'll find that you can start to move your life in a direction that feels more meaningful and more fulfilling, like you're more on purpose, because you're not just reacting to the stuff that's being thrown at you. And of course, the more you react less to that and the more you bring into awareness the things that you want, the more your brain's going to mark those things as important, which means you're going to see those opportunities more. It's kind of like a really, really super simple version of this is like red car syndrome. You know, you ever had the experience of buying a new car and all of a sudden you go, oh, that's the car that I really want. And then you start seeing them everywhere.
Yep.
Well, imagine that it's kind of like that. You know, the brain goes, oh, well, this is something that's deemed important. So we're going to bring we're going to bring that into your awareness. We're going to draw your attention to that, which of course, if you look at in terms of the world of possibility and the world of opportunity, you'll start seeing all these opportunities and possibilities and things happening all around you that you can go, well, yeah, that's what I'm after, because the brain's going, yep, that's important. Draw your attention to it. That's important. Draw your attention to it. So it's almost like this cycle that's got to start with awareness. And once you have that awareness, you can then start this cycle off that you start to bring more of the things that you want into your life. So that's, I think, probably the way that I can explain the simplest aspect of what you began to talk about there without getting too crazy into opening Pandoras Box.
We'll open Pandora's Box another time, but it's interesting to get in there and ultimately go, like, what is the life I want? What is the experience I want to have? And then these simple things, breaking it down makes a massive difference. So I want to look at, I talk a lot about momentum. And so if someone wants to really find flow, find momentum, and I'll categorize that. I put momentum, and when I think about it, I think about dolphins, how they move. You know, they're a crew. If they've got a fight to eat, they'll do that. But most of the time they're playing. They're like, yay, like just moving, playing, surfing the waves, blah, blah, blah. Every now and then they got to attack, get some fish, get something to eat. But most of the time, 95% of the time, they're having the bliss time. And they just kind of know, they have a natural awareness where to go.
Yeah.
So actually, before I drop onto that one, I want to ask, like, neuroscience, programming per se, or study, programming the brain versus natural genius. So this is a question I want to ask. Can genius be programmed?
Oh God! I think first of all we'd have to operationally define what we mean by genius, what we consider to be a program. Can you get a little bit more specific or contextualize the question a bit to try and put some more constraints on it?
Yeah, 100%. Let's say pick one. Let's say Nikola Tesla. He's a pretty interesting character.
Yep.
Familiar with him? Yeah.
Yep.
I figured he would be. And say Nikola Tesla, one of the guys that does some study on him, Patrick Flanagan, when he was 6, he told his parents that he was Nikola Tesla reincarnated. Fascinating conversation. But ultimately, he has particular...
This is the little kid physicist?
Yeah, Nikola Tesla. And then
not Nikola Tesla.
Patrick Flanagan. He's now a man. Like, he's now about 60, I believe. But when he was 6 years old, he said to his parents, without knowing who Nikola Tesla is, I'm Nikola Tesla reincarnated.
Yep.
So to give it more clarity would be, say you were to program your eye with all the characteristics of Nikola Tesla using neurofeedback, latest technologies. We're seeing more things lately. Like, have you used the Neurophone before? You put it on here and you can hear through your brain.
No.
I have to send you a link to that. It's pretty cool.
Please. Yeah.
But But just I'm fascinated because we're having so much more access to technology now and processes and things. So that I guess it's looking at, can you curate high levels of intelligence to the level of Nikola Tesla? Or is that something that's like a glitch in the matrix?
I'm going to suggest that if it is possible, that we're a long way off. I think one of the things that's really interesting is this idea that, and I hear it quite a bit, when we unlock the secrets of the brain, and I think it's the wrong. I don't think it's a very accurate way of looking at it. It's not like there's some hidden little box somewhere like within the brain that if we can only find the right key that we can access it, and then all of a sudden we figure out everything. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, we're talking about arguably the most complex thing in the known universe, and I think what really my focus is in my area of study is really figuring out what are the things that we know and we can confidently say are going to make the biggest changes with people, and I'll leave it up to some others to look into, well, what are the other possible ways of accessing that faster and quicker with technology, as an example. And I was reading about Elon Musk's AI integration thing, I think it was this morning or something. So there are people that are doing that sort of thing. I think we're probably a lot further, like it's a lot further away than what we think. And so, I'm just going to bring it back to really focusing on, well, what are the things that we know now, especially from the last 2 or 3 years, that are going to make the biggest changes with people so that they can have this more self-directed life. And so I think there's a lot of potential there with technology in the future. And I'm really just fascinated and interested to see where it goes. So I know I just don't answer your question directly, but
it does. It's good.
But I'm probably a little bit more interested in, well, what can we do now? Because we can do some things that make incredibly dramatic changes. But in terms of uploading genius, so to speak, I think we'd have to. I think I'm more interested in helping someone bring out their own inner genius in the way that they want to, as opposed to downloading or uploading someone else's version of that. And I really believe that everyone has their own inner genius that needs to be brought out. And I think that's very much a part of living this self-directed life. It's realizing one's own abilities. And I think people have so much more than what they think they have. And I put the emphasis on the word think. We're talking about this flow state and just the example that you gave with dolphins. I think it's a beautiful way of describing it. It's this flow, it's this engagement and connection with ourselves and other people in the world around us that we can move through our life in ways that can be very meaningful and fulfilling. And thinking is one part of that, but I think people put way too much focus on the thinking component, and they forget about a lot of the rest of the parts of us that contribute to that experience. That resonates with you?
100%. People, I definitely think people think too much. I think that's why a lot of people are exhausted. And then we can get a lot in our heads. It's cool. But ultimately on that point, I know for myself, if I wake up and go, wow, now I am and choose to be crystal clear and aligned with my heart's vision, boom, just go and just align with those things. Like, rather than defining what my heart's vision has to be, just going on align with my heart's vision and seeing that there is a connection between our brain, our heart, our gut, and every element of our energy system. And it's fascinating to see. And also what I've been curious about too, we got to finish up in a second, but ultimately this.
We've been going that long.
It goes quick, flow states is what I love.
Flow states so far. So it's one thing I was going to say at the very beginning, actually, which was, I've got to set a reminder on these things because sometimes it can just go into hours.
We'll have to do it one time with a campfire. I love,
absolutely.
Like I said, we haven't met in real life yet, but we will. And
for sure,
have certainty around that. And what I love is when we actually get down and dive deep around a campfire, because that thing, it's great to unpack over a call, do a podcast, share some information with you guys. But that thing about what we talked about before, that human connection, when you get people together, we're proposing an idea called family dinner. where we're going to bring the greatest minds together, fly them in.
Yep.
And you just go, well, cool. What are some of the biggest challenges in the world right now? Let's have a meal. See if we can attack some of these and make a positive difference. So it's just
beautiful,
like practical, tangible ways to instill these things in our daily life.
Yeah. Yep. Love it.
So if I want to build momentum in every area of my life, what are the top 5 things I can do?
Whoa. Okay.
I just want you to bang them out real quick. Like,
sure. Boom, boom. First one, you've got to figure out, what you want. And I don't mean that in terms of, I want a car, I want a house. Like, how, if at the end of your life, looking back and knowing that this is, whatever your beliefs are, afterlife, heaven, that, we're dead, buried in the ground and that's it. There's one thing that we know for sure, and that is that at the end of this life, your life on this planet as we know it in this form is going to cease to exist. Looking back, how do you want to spend that time? What sort of existence do you want to have? And I think a lot of people, if they put themselves in that final sort of last 2 weeks and look back, how do you want to exist? How do you want to be in this world? Figure out what you really want. What sort of connections do you want to have with people? What kind of, if legacy is important, what kind of legacy are you going to leave? What do you want to contribute to the world or to others or to community? Or what kind of partner do you want to be? What kind of parent do you want to be? What kind of, child to parents do you want to be, right? Figure all that stuff out. What do you really want? So that's the first one. The second one is that, that's definitely number one.
Yeah.
The other 4, I'm not going to put in any particular order. So I'm just going to, as they come to mind. One would be that you can choose to be any way you want to be. One of the favorite sayings I have is that states become traits. Another way, a negative way of looking at this is also the grumpy old man syndrome. Want to figure out why someone's a grumpy old man? It's because they've accessed that particular state over and over and over again. So they've wired up their brain to be like that. But we don't have to be the way that we have been being. We can just decide right now to be a completely different way. And the more you decide to show up in that form, whatever that means for the people that are watching this, right? The more you continuously do it, the more you will become that. The more you access the states that you want to access, the more they'll become traits of yours. And that's just how you'll be, almost like a default way of being, so to speak. That's the second one. The next one is, and I'm probably a little bit biased in this respect, I'm going to suggest that contributing to something that's outside of your own personal selfish needs is incredibly rewarding and can be very meaningful and very fulfilling. Contribute. And it's not to say that you're not going to get something back out of that, but don't do it for those reasons. Contribute to local community, contribute to your field, contribute to the planet, contribute at all those different levels. Contribute. It's so rewarding and you can get so much out of it.
I'd like to see where contribution shows up in the brain too. I'm sure it'd tweak certain things that I'm sure it'd affect our brain chemistry. It has to.
Yeah. That's a really interesting one, actually. Definitely worth looking into. 4th and 5th. All right, let me give you some more sort of tactical, practical things that you can do. A morning routine. I can't stress the importance of a really good morning routine. And I'm just going to share some of the things that I do. I find that listening to what other people do over the last couple of decades has really moved me in directions until I've kind of figured out what works for me. And so I just think listen to a lot of people and what they do in their morning routine. So every morning I'll write down, what do I value? What are my values? Because I want to be values driven and I want to connect with those things. And they change, of course. What I write down today is going to be different from what I write down tomorrow. I think one of the ways that people can really figure out what they value is without any thought, just get out a pen and notepad and start writing down. I value this, I value this, I value this, I value this. And every day over time, you'll really start to narrow down to the things that, that you really value. And then you can put them as your priority and use them as drivers. Gratitude. What am I thankful for?
Yeah.
This is a thing that comes up over and over and over again, but really, what are you thankful for? Start off being thankful for, it could be something as simple as, I'm alive, I'm breathing, this is great, to specific things. So every day I'll, in the morning, write down things that you're thankful for. Then, like for me, I'm always connecting with my mission, which is getting a little bit more strategic about what I'm going to do for the day. I don't have a set structure in that. I'm like, okay, at 10 o'clock I'm doing this, 11 o'clock I'm doing this, 12 o'clock I'm doing this. It's too sort of conscious mind, thought process oriented in that sense. I like to go, all right, well, now this is my mission. This is the direction that I'm moving in, rather than this is what I'm wanting to achieve. This is the direction I'm moving in.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm going to feel as I'm moving in that direction. What's the one thing that I could do next that's going to move me forward the most? And I'll just go and do that thing.
I like that.
And so I'm very much driven by the direction, not driven by, I've got to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Because you can do the X, Y, Z later. But those first few hours, especially in the day, I think let's get going.
Yeah.
Move the body, get lots of water, get some proper nutritious food. So I do those top 3 things in the morning routine as well. And I think those really set up the day ahead for maximum productivity and enjoyment as well. So I want to enjoy what I'm doing. So that's number 4. Might just leave it at 4. I can't think of a 5th one. And enjoy the direction, enjoy the flow, enjoy the process, right? Don't get too caught up in your head. So that would probably be number 5. Just enjoy the direction. Stop having expectations and pressures and putting things on yourself that say, I have to do this. It has to be that way. It should be like this. None of that matters. It's just set the direction and just enjoy the process as it unfolds.
I love that.
Yeah, that'd be number 5.
That's how I came up with a Lifetarian. Because Leonardo da Vinci, he didn't have a business card that said, I do X.
Yeah.
And he was he did so much amazing stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And the more I like just got some real clarity and insights in how you set your day up. It was awesome. And I know you guys watching are going to love all that stuff too. So the final thing we're going to finish on is you got 55 seconds. Speak. One of my visions, I like sharing this publicly more. One of the reasons I do what I do, I've got a vision to have 5 million people come together in 2025 to explore superpowers.
Yep.
And so you're speaking at that event. You got 55 seconds to share it. Normally I say you're going to speak to the whole planet, but let's make it tangible. You're speaking at that event, 2025. There's 5 million people came up.
Yeah.
You just want to share whatever you want to share for 55 seconds to the world.
About anything.
Whatever you want. And
sure.
Mike, you can have 10 seconds to think about it. And it doesn't matter. Okay. You're not going to get it right or wrong. It's just like, what's on your heart now?
Yeah, sure. So I probably touched on it a little bit in the 5 things, and that is that you really can have the life that you want to have. We are so blessed to, for most of us, I'm going to say most of us, we're so blessed to live in a world where we have so many opportunities available to us. And that really all it takes is, getting in alignment with who you want to be, how you want to be being in this world. And once you're in alignment with that, just enjoying the process of allowing your life to unfold and be curious about what that's going to look like and the directions that you can move in, how you can contribute to others, how you can connect with other people, how you can share and be part of this whole group mindset of taking human evolution to the next stage. And I think that absolutely starts with figuring out at an individual level what you want your life to be about. And once you do that, you can start to move out from there and become part of this movement forward as we, I think, take human existence to the next level. And it would just be as simple as that.
I love that. And I love that you touched on how blessed and fortunate we are.
So much so. I think, I have no other words other than it's so incredibly fortunate. I've spent quite a bit of time over the last 10, 15 years traveling around the world and experiencing different cultures and seeing different things. and we just have it so friggin' good. Like, really. And I'm gonna say, I think we almost have a responsibility to figure out what our abilities are so that we can give more to other people that don't have it as good, but also to other people that are in the same society that we are, that are a little bit lost, to help them find out what they want so that they can contribute in the way that they want to as well, rather than being stuck in this cage, stuck in the existing patterns and routines and programs that life has put on us all. So I think we have the ability to break through that. And I think if we work together, we can really accomplish an incredible number of great things.
I believe that 100%. We can wake people up and, look after ourselves, look after our community, look after humanity.
Yeah.
And the more, I've just been doing this exercise for a while, I share it with a lot of people in the podcast, but every day I put my hands out like this.
Yeah.
And imagine I've got the whole world in my hands. Then I come back to just my business, my life, my family. I've been doing this with my baby, and I've been hearing about it actually increases the IQ of your unborn child. So I've just been testing it. We'll see. We've got a little baby, so just a little happy baby, happy. But just blessing everyone and everything. And I don't know, it's like the gratitude process. I put it in my daily practice now.
Yeah. Sometimes
I do it every hour. And I just noticed that I seem to be getting luckier. I seem to have the most amazing people ever. They just bump into my life. And, that focus has become that. And so grateful, so fortunate. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show. If people do want to find out how to connect with you and what your mission is, where's the best place to find you? I'll put everything in show notes, but just...
Yeah, absolutely. So our main project for the rest of my life now is at the neurocoaching.institute. So rather than .com, it's .institute, neurocoaching.institute. And you'll see it is mostly for coaches and practitioners, but there's a lot of stuff for neurohackers as well, people interested in using neuroscience to lead this more self-directed life of positive engagement and meaning, achievement and fulfillment. And it's been an absolute pleasure being on the call with you. Grateful to be here.
Oh, likewise. I can't wait till we catch up in real life, because those things...
Definitely.
I'm getting fascinated by technology. I'm doing the qigong, the nutrition. I'm going wide in terms of everything. But ultimately, like you say, so I can give more.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm in a fortunate place. I'm grateful. And so we can have more of these conversations.
For sure, definitely.
And move beyond our little magic bubble, because so many people don't get to live this way. And I realize that. And if that's you watching this, check out what we've got. There's so much free content. There's so many things you can have access to. Appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end. You guys have the full attention. You're amazing. Thanks for being part of another episode of the Lifetarian Show. Thank you so much. Boom.
Awesome.